Hey guys, how's it going? Aura Rabba here, and in this video, I'm going to share with you my simple yet productive book writing process. Let's get into it. So, what we're going to cover in this live stream is pretty simple. We're going to cover the productive steps I actually took, what my story was, and how I actually applied those steps to my story. And then I'm going to share with you some extra tips, which is some ChatGPT and Claude.ai tips or prompts you can use to help you with your writing process as a writing aid, basically. And then I'll share with you what I think's next for me and my book. So let's get into it. So first of all, let's talk about the productive steps. Now, there are a few things I had to bear in mind before doing it. There was the principles, so thinking just the mindset and things I need to have in place in order to help me be productive and effective in my book writing process. Then, besides the principles, I also had a plan. I had to then write and then I had to edit. So those four simple things are the things you need to keep in mind when you are writing. So that's principles, plan, write, and edit. Okay, let's go into each of these one by one. So, in terms of principles, first of all, I realized, okay, I need to know a rough path that would get me from the point of thinking of writing a book to actually having a first draft written. Okay. And then the other thing I needed to bear in mind is I needed to set the bar low. What I mean by setting the bar low is that I had to think of two types of goals: process goals and outcome goals. Now, the outcome goal is the major goal. It's the my book is finished. That's the outcome goal. But there are different things that we can do, different steps that we can take in the interim that would all lead to the outcome goal. And those steps you can take in between are process goals. And those are the things that are within your control. Say, for example, for writing a book, the outcome goal obviously is the written book or the first draft of the book. The process goal may be writing daily. The process goal may be writing the outline. It could also be choosing how many hours or how many hours a day you work on it, or even better still, how many words you write a day, sort of thing. And for me, when I look at these goals, I set them low. So if it's my first book, right? The first book I'm going to be publishing. What I decided to do was not to go for a book that was going to be so many characters, so many words. No, 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 no. I'm starting from something simple. So what I decided to do is I first of all decided I'm going to write a short book. What that did for me is that it freed me up from having to think about whether my book, would be long enough or whatever. I said, no, it just has to be long enough to give it out the information that is required by the readers and for them to get the experience or the outcome that they're looking for. And that's it. It doesn't need to be any longer than that. I was a bit inspired by Austin Kleon and the different books he's written, like Still Like an Artist and what was the other one? Oh, I've forgotten. Show Your Work. There we go. And those two books weren't particularly long books, but they were impactful. And I'd like to be able to write a book like that. So that aside, that was my low bar outcome goal. Now, my low bar process goal was a bit different. So with that, my process goal was, you know what, I need to write 200 words daily. That's it. Now, 200 words, to give you an idea of how many words 200 words is, it's basically taking an A4 sheet of paper, which would be, I don't have any A4 around me right now, but take this notebook, for example, right? This, if it was a full paper, it would be this big, right? And now what I've done is cut it in half. Okay. And then literally 200 words is this page. You get me? Just this page, just like that. 100 words. Now, I told myself that's all I had to do in a day. I was free to do more than that if I wanted to. But in order to keep track and keep moving on with this goal, the least I would have to write is 200 words a day. And that was my simple goal. That was it. So I thought, okay, that's doable. Then another principle to keep in mind is consistency over big pushes. I used to be the sort of person where I would decide, you know what, I'm going to go hard on something. And so I could spend like maybe 8 hours a day working on something for, I don't know, 2 weeks and hopefully finish before then because I run out of steam. And once I run out of steam, it takes a while for me to get back. And sometimes I never get back on those projects. And so I just thought, okay, you know what, this year I want to be a more consistent person. That was my overarching goal. I want to be a more consistent person, somebody who can stick with things and see them through and see the results of sticking through with those things. So one of the manifestations of this was writing this book. So then I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to just maintain consistency. Again, going back to the process goal, just write 200 words a day. That's it. Not more than that. Not, you can write more than that if you want, but you don't have to. You're not being pushed. Just 200 words a day. Let's just settle for that. So I thought, okay, that works. And then the other thing I had to bear in mind is done is better than perfect. What does that mean? It means no room for perfectionism. Just make sure you just get it done. So when it comes to the writing, don't overthink it. Just take everything that's in your head, write it down as fast as you can, and then after we can look at editing later. But the writing process should be separate from the editing process. So that was my thinking. But then beyond that, I've also considered things like planning. Like for in order to make this book successful, there needed to be a plan in place to help me just execute it as easily and as simply as I possibly could. So here's what I did. First of all, my decision to write a short book meant that the outline also needed to be short. So I wrote an outline, just outlining about 6 chapters that would take people from A to B. A being the point where they don't know the thing that they want to know from the book, and then B being the point where they know that thing and they can do something with it. That was a simple thing. So what are the steps to get them there? And then in my outline, I looked at the why read this book or why go for this, and why was a worthy cause. And then also looked at the different things that they needed to know in order to get into what they needed to get to. I'll get to the story of which book I read. So just hold on there. Next, I also had to think, like, what was the purpose? What is it that I'm actually trying to teach people through this book? My book is a nonfiction book, by the way, so it's not fiction. It's pretty clear. There's a clear outcome that's to come from this book. So what is this clear outcome I'm trying to give the audience? That's something I needed to show in, like, or to just have planned out in the book. And then there's topic familiarity, so making sure that I'm writing something that I'm very familiar with so that I don't have to spend too much time researching for the first draft. I can just blaze through it. So that was my thinking. And then finally, dealing with obstacles before they arise. Now this is a game changer for me. And I think I saw it on YouTube. So somebody else was talking about how they deal with the obstacles before they come, the obstacles to their goals. That way, when those obstacles do come, they're ready for them and they know how to handle them. And that was mind blowing because previous times when I've tried to write a book, something always came along the way. So whether it be maybe I pushed myself too hard and then I couldn't write anymore, I just got bored of it. But then anticipating these things that could stop me from completing the goal meant that when it was time to actually write and do these things, I had those things prepared. I had those, would I say, antidotes to the obstacles or the resistances to the obstacles that I could then employ to make sure that I didn't, fall off the track or stop progressing towards my goal. Anyways, that was the plan. Then afterwards, writing. That is literally it. You've got to then get on to write. It's not a case of thinking, okay, make all these plans and somehow magically happen. You do have to put in the work and write. But we've made it easy. Just 200 words a day. Just keep writing daily. That's it. Simple. Just keep it simple. Just like that. And when I'm writing, particularly the first draft, I actually write by hand. It's one of my keys for dealing with distractions, but also I think better when I write by hand somehow. I feel like my ideas flow better. They go from my head to the pen. I don't have to deal with typos on the computer whilst I'm typing. I can just write freely, and that has been very, very freeing for me. It does take maybe a bit longer than typing, but I dare say the quality of what I write by hand tends to be better because I have time to think as I write. All right, so let's move on. And then I just thought, build a writing streak. So the way I decided to do this and to keep myself accountable was to have a YouTube channel, which I do have, and which is what you're watching on, where I document my writing. So every time when I'm writing, I go live. It's just a work with me sort of session, got some nice music playing in the background, and I'm just writing away. Now, what that does for me is that it helps keep me accountable. And because I'm putting it out there, so showing my work and putting it out there, I just feel accountable to it. And then it actually felt really cool. I'll tell you actually what was the result of streaming along as I did the writing. But anyway, let's come to that. I'll tell you that in a story. Okay, next on the list finally is the editing. So after I've done my first brain dump, just gotten everything from my head down onto paper, usually in writing by hand, it felt good. Then the next stage would be to have that typed up onto the computer and then start editing properly and moving things about, removing some things, adding things that were missing, that sort of thing. Now, in order to do that, I don't necessarily go about typing by hand because that just feels quite long. And there are many ways of getting things on a blank page on a computer. One way is to narrate it, and that's what I do. So I go into Google Docs and use the tool called voice typing. Now, when it comes to voice typing, you just click the button, you speak, Google types it for you. It's brilliant. Now, it does come with some errors sometimes, and you can edit along as you're talking, but it is brilliant for just getting things from the written page out to your Google to your Google Doc very quickly. So definitely recommend that. So I do that. And then after I've got it all on the page, I then go ahead and start editing just chapter by chapter and section within each chapter. And again, I set the bar low when it comes to editing. So just edit minimum of 200 words a day. I can go as far as I want if I want to, but I don't have to. 200 words a day will make progress. And I often find I tend to do more than 200 for either writing or editing. And that's my basic process. After I've done the first round of edits, I'll then ask a friend to read it for me and then give me feedback on places that aren't clear and places that I could better explain what I'm looking to explain. And I would usually get somebody who is unfamiliar with the topic, because if they can understand it, then those who are more familiar with the topic, at least to an extent, would be able to understand it. So that's the idea. And then eventually get a professional editor or somebody who is in maybe the legal profession, because they're pretty good when it comes to combing through written work and understanding what the words are saying and being very precise there. Or just get, like I said, get an editor. They would know what to look out for. And then once you've had a few rounds of the book and you've gone back and forth with your editor, you're basically done with your book. And that can be done pretty quickly. So without further ado, let me now tell you my writing story. Late December. It was a snowy winter evening, and it was quite flurry outside, so there was a lot of snow falling, but I was nice and cozy in my living room. And a thought occurred to me. I'd like to make another step or another attempt at writing a book. I did try last year, and the way I went about it, I wrote a lot, but then I ran out of steam, and I was going for different metrics, like trying to write a book between 50,000 and 70,000 words, and making sure that, I tried to write about 1,000 to 3,000 words a day. And initially I had the enthusiasm to go for it, but eventually that waned and the book just never saw the light of day, which is unfortunate, but that was that. And I was determined that this time was going to be different. So I just sat down and thought about what the book was going to be about, and then decided that actually the area of expertise where I am familiar with is voiceovers, particularly because I'm a voiceover artist and I've been through the process where I've helped companies and individuals bring their content to life using my voice. So whether that's in e-learning, audiobooks, or ads, I've done them all, or even announcements for conferences, live and pre-recorded. I've done them all, and it's been beautiful just doing that. And I thought it'd be nice to share my knowledge so I can help other people who are interested in it. But then voiceovers is quite a broad category, right? And many people may not even know what voiceovers are. So I thought, okay, let's niche down a little bit. All that advice you get, niche down. So I thought, let's do that. So instead, what I decided to do was to focus on creating a book that would be beneficial to my potential clients. So within the voiceover area, I decided to niche down and focus on narration for audiobooks. So not teaching how to do narration, but teaching about the whole process involved in creating an audiobook. So getting an audiobook from the written manuscript to the audiobook where you can listen, and it's available on platforms such as Audible. And I thought, okay, it'd be great to help them understand the whole process and then see where they may need to outsource some parts. And I can help with that outsourcing, but basically to help them just understand the whole process. So by the time they're getting into it, they feel confident about it and they can get things done as quickly as they need to be. So that was that. Okay, so I had the idea, teach new first-time audiobook creators the whole process from beginning to end of how an audiobook is produced. Okay, so we've got our topic, got topic familiarity. Let me go back on the slide so you can see. So I have topic familiarity, right? And then now I then needed to think, okay, the book purpose was to teach them how to understand the whole process of writing an audiobook. So that was pretty clear. And then, like I said, I did the outlines. And so I wrote down an outline of 6 chapters covering the things that I think they needed to know to help them be comfortable with the whole process and understand the process of creating an audiobook. So that went well. And after I wrote that, I thought, this is interesting. But you see, it was about Christmas, December time, New Year time, where there were all the festivities. So I kind of left it, just in the corner for a little bit whilst I just did all the family stuff, the nice family stuff that happens during the festive period. So did that, and that was great. But then come January, I remembered it and I thought, ooh, I need to pick up this project again. I need to get started on writing my book. We're going to do just 200 words a day. But this time, what I planned to do was, again, to set the bar low and just go for something that felt comfortable for me to handle, but still would be impactful, would have results that would be impactful. So what I then decided to do was just, I think it was the 15th of January I started. I literally, on my YouTube page, would just go live whenever I was writing for the book. And I would just sit there, write by hand, have some nice lo-fi music or lo-fi beats playing in the background, and just stream as I wrote. And the streaming side was interesting because I wanted to stream in order to just learn more about live streaming, because it's just a world that I wasn't as familiar with, but I've just found fascinating. But beyond that, it was a way to keep myself accountable. So to make sure that I was writing daily and I could see and track my progress because it was literally visible online. Again, showing my work online. So in doing that, I then found that day one came. I wrote more than 200 words. I was actually there for maybe an hour or two, and I thought, ooh, I'm making progress. So I just kept writing and kept going. And before I knew it, by about day 10, I was done with the first draft. I was shocked because I didn't necessarily plan to see how long it would take me to write, but I didn't think it would be that quick. But I was done within 10 days with the first draft. And so I then proceeded to type it all up. But you see, even before that, I had a few obstacles I thought, ooh, could come up, and I needed to find a way of dealing with them. Let me share a few of them with you. So here were the obstacles. Being distracted. So to avoid myself being distracted by notifications on my phone or on my laptop, I was writing by hand. Now, writing by hand meant that it was just me and the paper. So just me, the book, and the pen, right? And that was it. No distractions, no notifications popping up. That was really helpful to me. The other thing that was really helpful was putting my phone on silent. By my phone being on silent, I just wouldn't hear the notifications. And then my phone was face down, so I couldn't see the notifications. So that was great. That was great. That was great. There were times when I still peeped at my phone a little bit, but because I wasn't focused on it and because the sounds weren't there, I wasn't distracted by it. Another thing I then realized I could do was actually inform my family members and say, I'm going to be recording for this period. I'm going to need some time where I'm going to need to not be disturbed and I can just focus and just get some things done. And, they obliged. So that was really nice. And then it just, by pre-warning them and telling them in advance, it just helps to minimize friction and, disagreements later on, or people calling for your attention when you just need to really focus. So there was that. Then there was the idea of getting bored. I know in the last attempt I had at writing a book, I did get bored of the writing at some point, but I think it was because I pushed myself too hard. And then I thought, okay, what are ways of dealing with this so that I don't have to deal with that in future? And if that comes, I know how to deal with it. But here are a few things that I did to help me deal with that. One of them was switching to a different activity. So if I don't know, I got bored with writing by hand, just switch to typing up what I'd already written. That's a low energy, no, is the word energy? A low commitment effort, maybe? I don't know what you call it. But it was something that could just kind of get me back in the rhythm and I would still be making progress, So I thought, okay, that's one way to deal with it. Another way was to take a 5-minute break. Sometimes you're just tired and so you just need a break. So just take a 5-minute break, walk around, get some fresh air, stretch the legs, and then come back to it. And you just keep making progress that way. Then another way I did to help myself was to use the Pomodoro method, which is a method to get you started in writing and in in whatever task you want to do. You just set yourself a timer for 25 minutes. And so you work in 25-minute bursts, basically. So work for 25 minutes, rest or take a break for 5 minutes, then do another 25 and 5, that sort of thing. What I found, though, is that I've had to adapt that for myself. So in a situation where I find that I am procrastinating or about to procrastinate, what I would actually do is set the timer for 5 minutes and tell myself I only have to write for 5 minutes, right? I only have to go make progress with that 5 minutes. But what I often find is that when I do that, it kind of just spurs me on to write, and then I end up writing for way longer than those 5 minutes. But then it just helps me jumpstart my writing process. It's a similar thing with the setting the bar low and writing 200 words a day. It just makes you realize, okay, 200 words isn't that long. Isn't that much. I can do that in a day. So that was something I then did with that. Another thing I could do as well, which is now when I just face a situation where I don't feel like writing at all, is use all the steps I just mentioned beforehand and also do some voice typing on Google using Google Docs. So instead of writing by hand, if writing by hand is the problem, just tell the chapter as opposed to writing it, just narrate it. Again, that's just a way of helping me to keep making progress with it. If I got to a section where I felt stuck or I didn't know how to progress, what I would then do is just make sure that I found ways to get myself unstuck. One way might be to just skip that page and then come back to it another time. That was something I did quite often, and just put a note to myself that I needed to come and complete this. And another bit would be to use ChatGPT or Claude.ai to help me generate ideas for a particular area. I'm going to share some of the prompts that I've used in it. And with these obstacles and finding these ways of dealing with those obstacles, I found that I was actually able to just keep writing, and it was actually kind of fun. And it was fun actually live streaming as well. There are a few people who just randomly joined the live stream. They'd ask me about my book writing, and it was kind of it was a nice distraction to just reply them, tell them a bit about my book. They'd find it encouraging for them, and they also say, oh, they'd want to get onto writing a book as well. So that was pretty motivating for me. And then I'll just carry on. And then there were subsequent days as well where I actually had people come on board, maybe the first day, second day, third day, just checking up on me and my journey. These people I don't know before, subscribers I've never interacted with before. And that just felt really, really good. And so it just spurred me on to keep going. So these are ways I just dealt with the obstacles that came. And then once I'd written the first draft, and it took me 10 days to do that, I then proceeded to type it up. So voice type. And sometimes I edit it as I voice type. Sometimes I just voice typed it. And I found it was actually faster for me to just get everything on the screen first and then go about editing afterwards. And then I've done that. So I'm now in the editing phase, basically. So I'm still going through that. I'm going that with a bit of a fine tooth comb. I may need to just move a little bit faster on it. But I'm done with chapter 1 and chapter 2. I now need to move on to chapter 3. I've got about 6 chapters to go through. So I'm about halfway there. So not bad. And today would be day 16. So not bad at all. I'm making progress, and I'm really, really happy about that. And that has been my journey so far. But as I told you at the beginning of this video, some bonus tips I have for you is I'm going to share with you some prompts I use with ChatGPT and Claude.ai to help me with my writing, to use them basically as writing aids to help me just write better and to help me get unstuck. Let me share a few of them with you. Here's the first one. So in my writing, what I want to do is make sure that my writing is very simple and very clear so that anybody can pick up the book and feel confident by the end of the book that they understand the process and they can manage the process of producing an audiobook. So what I do is at the end of each chapter, I have two sorts of summaries. I have a longer or mid-length summary where I kind of just go through the key points that were in that chapter. And then I have a shorter summary, which will probably be about a paragraph long, maybe 4 or 5 lines long, which just gives just a few bullet points or a few key pieces of information about what was covered in that chapter, such that I imagine somebody might just be flicking through the chapters and maybe they just go back to the end of one chapter and see, okay, what was covered there. They can see really quickly what they covered. And so it just helps to jog their memory sort of thing and to make things easier. So that's what I wanted to do. I want to make my book very easy, very consumable, and just a very, very helpful aid. So I needed to make summaries, but this was a part I felt I could actually automate quite a bit. So I would take the chapter, copy and paste it. And I used Claude.ai for this rather than ChatGPT just because Claude.ai can take a bigger input. So it can take, I think, up to 70,000 characters or 70,000 words or something like that. Really, really big compared to the free version of ChatGPT, whereas this is the free version of Claude.ai. It's another AI tool. So that's what I was using. So I'd take chapter 1, put it in there, and then write this prompt. I'd say, here's chapter 1 of my book. Help me write a summary of the chapter and the TLDR summary. So TLDR is too long, didn't read. It's just shorthand for saying, like, just give me the bare bones summary. So I told it to help me write those 2 summaries. And then I told it how I wanted the summary to feel. So I said, okay, write it in the past tense, make it informal, and use simple English. Use I or we instead of the author. Make it inclusive. I want the readers to feel like they're being carried along the journey. And in order to do now, this prompt came out of a few refinements. So I'd started off with just help me write a summary as well as a TLDR summary. And then I kept adding a few things to make it work well for me. And then I used this prompt for the subsequent chapters just to create a summary there. And that was really, really helpful. So if you have a book where you need to write a summary for the chapters, I would say select the chapter, put it in ChatGPT or Claude.ai. I think Claude.ai in this particular case, and then let it give you the summary. And then you can take it out, you can tweak it. If the style in which it wrote it doesn't quite match your style, you can then tweak it, but at least it helps you with that. You don't need to think too hard for that, and you can just make progress with that. And then if there are any bits that you felt should have been added to the summary that haven't been added, you can just add those. Perfect. All right, let's move on. The next prompt I used was, how can I add a hook to chapter one to make it interesting for people who want to read more within the book? Now, this for me was very interesting. Now, I did this because I wanted to make sure that when people open up the book for the first time, or if they're listening on audiobook, they immediately feel engaged in the book. Something in the book grabs them. So I was thinking, okay, that would be really good to have. And I learned that from doing YouTube videos. They always talk about creating a hook at the beginning to let people know they're in the right place and to, make them feel like this video is worth watching. And I thought the same principle should apply to books. So that's how I decided to apply that there. But let me share with you some of the things that I got in response to this. So it gave me longer answer, but here are the highlights. It gave me ideas for hooks, such as writing an evocative opening scene, or starting with an intriguing statistic or a compelling quote, or painting a vivid outcome. And I thought, ooh, these are really interesting, but how do I do that? That led me to my third prompt, in which I just literally told it, okay, help me write hooking paragraphs I could add to chapter one. And it did that. And it gave me a few, and I thought, ooh, this is good. I had to do just a few tweaks, but then it already had my chapter one, so it knew what I was writing about, and it just helped me add a few hooks, paragraphs that had hooks in them that would make it really interesting for the reader. And I thought, oh, this is genius. This is beautiful. So yeah, you could try that with your chapter. I would say write the chapter first, and then put it into Claude.ai and ask it to help you with creating this hook for your book. The one thing I would say though is that if it presents you with any stats, go on Google and find out the accurate number for that stat, because sometimes these AI tools hallucinate a little bit. So you want to make sure that it gives you correct stats and you can back it up with a reference. That's just something to bear in mind. But other than that, it's great for it. Now let's move on to the fourth prompt. Reword this in fifth grade English. Now, sometimes the way I write might seem a lot more advanced than it really needs to be for the book. So what I do instead is I just write, because I'm when I'm writing without filters. So I just write as it comes to me, but then I need to take that information that I've written and put it in a tool like ChatGPT or Claude.ai, or even another one called Quillbot, to help me reword it in a way that is very simple. So anybody reading it, whether they're young or old, or particularly those who are maybe not as familiar with the English language, can still understand it because it's in simple English, and they can then consume the knowledge that way. So that's what I did to make sure my book was quite easy to understand and just an easy read, but one that would still be very impactful. And then the fifth prompt I used was, what are useful checklists for my readers which would be relevant to this book? And basically, my book is about helping writers understand the process, writers or people involved in the production process of audiobooks, to actually understand the full process and actually be able to manage the process themselves. And so I felt, okay, to help them even further and to deliver more value to my readers, it would be helpful to have checklists that they can just refer back to, as opposed to having to read chapters and chapters to understand. Well, I just have to give them a really nice, neat checklist so that they can just tick off different parts of the process and know that they've done it and done it well. But I had a few ideas of the different checklists that should be included, but I wasn't sure if I had everything covered. So I asked this question, and brilliantly, it gave me a few checklists. But even better still was that the ones I had already written, it gave me extra points that I had forgotten to write about. So that was really helpful again. And then finally, my last prompt, is there anything I could improve with this text excerpt? And then I would insert the text excerpt underneath. Now, what it does is that it just helps you to improve your writing skill, or your writing output. So it might tell you, maybe start with a topic sentence, or maybe explain this better by adding examples, that sort of thing. So just different suggestions about things that I could do to just make the writing a bit better. And those were the prompts I used when writing my book. Whilst editing the book, there'll still be some other prompts I'm going to use to help me with making sure that I write a book that's very impactful, but also simple to understand. And I plan on continuing to use these tools going forward. Tell me, have you used any AI tools in your writing, whether it's writing a newsletter, writing an email, or writing a book like I'm currently doing? Let me know if you've ever done anything like this and what it was like. For me, I have to say it was pretty helpful and very helpful for helping myself get unstuck. So yeah, that has been my writing journey so far. And I hope the lessons I've shared here could be helpful to you. But then what's next? I'm going to put up the slide here really quickly, and this just shows you the list of useful prompts that I use. So just take a screenshot of this, pause this video, and then take a screenshot so that you have a copy of this if you want to use that in future. Okay, but what's next for me in terms of writing, in terms of all of this? I still need to finish the process of writing, right? So I'm still editing my book right now. So I'll edit it and then pass it on to a friend who's going to help me with just reading through and making any corrections, and then also letting me know if I'm being clear enough in my writing. I really, really hope to serve people through this writing by making it so uber clear that by the end of the time reading the book, they really do feel more confident about the whole process of creating an audiobook. And then beyond that, what else am I going to do once the book is all finalized? And I'm going to get an editor to help me with going through a professional editor to make sure the book is good, sound, and reads well. After that, I'm then going to publish the book, obviously, then create an audiobook for it. I'm a voiceover artist. I know how to do it. The book is about writing audiobooks, so no brainer. I should do that. And then afterwards, I'm going to look into, well, I'll start the process now, looking into book marketing strategies. So both for the book and the audiobook, and see what I can do with that. But yeah, that's it. And that's what I've learned in the process of writing my audiobook. I say my audiobook, my book about audiobooks. It's been pretty enlightening anyway. And I'm hoping sharing my journey along the way would help somebody with their journey as well. Let me know in the comments though. I'd love to start a conversation. Like, what do you do with your books and your, when you're just, what's your process for writing books or any writing you have to do? Let me know if there are things that I've shared that you think I could also do better or could also add to my process. Please share with me because I'm still new on this journey, but I'm hoping that I can, keep improving and get to a point where I'm able to publish a book a year. That would be amazing. That would actually be amazing. But yeah, let's see. Anyway, I hope you found this helpful. Go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and then also share this video with a friend who you think this might be helpful to. So somebody maybe who's writing a book or who's been thinking about writing a book or who's been talking for the longest time about writing a book. Go ahead and share this with them because I think this could be useful for them. And then I will catch you in the next video. In the meantime, check out the video that's going to appear somewhere in the middle of the screen, somewhere about here. All right, I'll catch you in the next one. Take care, and I'll see you later. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe, please. Thank you. Bye.